With so many major historical events and well-known historical figures being associated with our state, one wonders just why do we call our home Wyoming? The story of how Wyoming came to be is one of those interesting little tidbits that show how one person's decision can ring out through time. In the first half of the 19th century, the fledgling United States purchased, or took through military conquest, the territory that is now called Wyoming. Parts of Wyoming were at one time claimed territory of the nations of France, Spain, Great Britain, and even the short-lived Republic of Texas. And of course, all of this territory was claimed by the indigenous peoples, like the Cheyenne, Shoshone, and Crow.
When the U.S. took control of these areas, they were deemed unorganized territory, meaning we kind of just don't know what to do with it yet. Then they were broken up into specific territories with specific administration. Wyoming, for a good bit of the 19th century, fell under the Dakota Territory or the Nebraska Territory. The Dakota Territory, to give you an example, was North Dakota, South Dakota, parts of Nebraska, Montana, and Wyoming. So for administrative reasons, it needed to be broken up even more.
The idea to make Wyoming an independent territory, which would allow people of that area to have more local government than one in Omaha or Yankton, was put forth in 1868 by an Ohio congressman named James Ashley. Representative Ashley had never been to the region he was proposing to be its own territory, and he didn't know much about it. But sponsoring a territorial bill would look good on his resume, so he went forward.
So Ashley was going to need a name for his bill and a name for his new territory. And he could go with something, locally indigenous, like Illinois had been done, Except here, that probably would have been Lakota or Cheyenne. And as the United States had just lost a war to the Lakota and Cheyenne, that name probably wouldn't have gone over very well in Washington. He could also go with a name like Lincoln. The late president was very popular at the time. However, he was so popular, everyone was using the name Lincoln. We weren't going to name it Lincoln. With nothing else to go on, Ashley decided he would just name it after something related to himself. He named it after the place he was born, the Wyoming Valley of northeast Pennsylvania. The word Wyoming is a Delaware Indian word that means large open space. And of course, the Delaware Indians aren't from anywhere near Wyoming. They're from Delaware. So you've got an almost 100,000 square mile territory, and you're going to name it after something related to yourself. That seems a bit selfish. But then you're going to name it after something that's 2,000 miles from where you're putting it? Who does that?
Just so you know, Wyoming, Pennsylvania is supposed to be a nice place. It just has nothing to do with the Wyoming we know. The town of Wyoming is on the banks of the Susquehanna River and has a population of roughly 3,500. Besides being the source of the name of the Equality State, it's most famous for the Wyoming Massacre, where during the Revolutionary War, British soldiers and members of a native tribe, maybe those Delaware Indians, raided and killed something on the order of 300 American settlers. And that's enough on Wyoming, Pennsylvania today. In July of 1868, the bill passed Congress and the Senate, and the territory of Wyoming was created with the exact same dimensions the state of Wyoming would eventually have. And of course, we have been Wyoming ever since.
And that's fine, because with all due respect to those folks that live a few miles north of Allentown, Pennsylvania, we pretty much own the name Wyoming. I mean, when you think of Wyoming, you think of the Wild West. And the Wild West was invented in Wyoming. In fact, it was invented by Buffalo Bill Cody, who did his legendary Wild West show about things that took place in Wyoming. While we're on the theme of Wild West shows and Wild West entertainment, Wyoming is the location where the first Western novel was written. Owen Wister's The Virginian, about a man who moves from Virginia to Wyoming, specifically Medicine Bow, Wyoming. And then, While we're on the theme of Westerns, let's talk Western movies. Let's talk movies at all. The first movie ever made for entertainment was The Great Train Robbery, based on a great train robbery by Butch Cassidy in Wyoming. Wyoming, home to the world's first national park, the first national monument, the first national forest. These are all things you think of with Wyoming.
Our Wyoming brings up thoughts of the mountain men and the era of the rendezvous. It's the high points of the Immigrant Trail, the Overland Trail, and the Union Pacific Railroad. It was the location of Fort Laramie and where Red Cloud fought the cavalry to a standstill. Our Wyoming is where women first got the right to vote, and it's the home of the first female governor. It's the land of great open plains, but it's also where you find huge mountain ranges and the headwaters of the Columbia, Colorado, and Mississippi rivers.
I mean, if we had to do it all over again, we might name Wyoming Washakie, after the great Eastern Shoshone chief Washakie. Or we might name it Bridger, after the mountain man Jim Bridger. But we really are fine with Wyoming. It's our name. To quote my buddy Billy Shakespeare, cowpoke from London, what is in a name? That which smells like a rose would smell as sweet by any other name. There may be a couple Wyomings in the world, but we know where the rose is.
Yeah.